Jillian, your journey started with a passion for fitness. How did you go from being a personal trainer to building this massive global brand? I mean, what was the turning point that made you realize you could turn your side hustle into this empire? I mean, you're a household name.
Oh gosh, you're very kind. It was extremely organic. And what I mean by that is, it was a side hustle, and I was working at a talent agency in Los Angeles. And the long and the short of it is I've never been more miserable working at that agency and never made less money in my life. So I end up working as an aide at a sports medicine facility. And I end up graduating into helping the patients rehabilitate injuries under the supervision of physical therapists, of course. And I was already a personal trainer, and then I was graduating them into personal training. And the long and the short of it is I ended up opening my own sports medicine facility. I'm still working under the supervision of the physiatrists and the physical therapists that worked for me at my place. And my name kind of got out there, and then I ended up on The Biggest Loser.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, it had great sides, it had not such great sides. But it did give me a huge platform to build a brand around the common sense of fitness and nutrition. And it really just evolved from there to where I am now, which still does touch on fitness and nutrition, but has evolved into much deeper aspects of health and wellness, if you will.
Yeah, it's so impressive how much you've been able to build this up and still just seem very genuine. I think that's part of your branding when you connect with other people and your followers, your fans. And it's very cool that you're also a fellow podcaster. You host Keeping It Real with Jillian Michaels, which is being produced by Bill Maher's team, if I got that right. And you're
Yes,
now,
that's right.
yeah, so it's very exciting to be rubbing shoulders with him and everything. I mean, now that you're adding the video aspect to the show, you're bringing the show to a new level. Why were you compelled to join the podcasting space? I mean, how did it fit into your empire? I'm just curious as someone that, I've been involved in podcasting since 2011. My co-host Benji's also been involved in podcasting for some time. How did you see that, oh, podcasting's the next part that I need in this big global brand of yours?
Well, again, very organic. I think things that are meant to be stem from authenticity and passion, a little serendipity, and an organic exploration because you're passionate about something. As I, of course, just said passion twice. Forgive me, the coffee hasn't
But
fully
that's how
hit my brain
passionate
yet.
you are, right? Like you got to say
Right,
it
I'm
twice.
definitely passionate. I'm like, Jill, really? Pull it together right now. So I started a little radio show in Los Angeles about 15 years ago on a local channel called KFI AM 640. And I needed to do it live every Sunday, which started to become impossible with my schedule. So it moved into podcasts. Gosh, I want to say a decade ago by now. And it started out answering questions a la Dr. Laura about fitness and nutrition. And then it evolved into really deep conversations about health. So, for example, gosh, why does a 30-year-old man today have the testosterone levels that a 50-year-old man did 30 years ago? So that's a show that I did with Dr. Peter Attia. Or why are we seeing young people like Kate Middleton and Olivia Munn or Sofia Vergara or Christina Applegate getting diagnosed with cancer left, right, and center? Why has early onset cancer diagnoses in people 18 to 49 gone up 79% in the past 3 decades? And that's a show that I just did with Dr. Casey Means and Dr. William Lee. So we started, and I say we because my producer back in the KFI days, Janice, has been with me this whole time. So we started moving into those areas of conversation. And then all of a sudden, health became a political football. And you're having to have conversations about the fact that, no, you're not healthy at any size. Wait a second, there's a cost-benefit analysis to any medication, drug, or vaccine that you should be educated on and discussing with your doctor. Hold on. We do need to have a honest conversation about what the data says regarding a transgender athlete debate. We shouldn't be medicalizing children who might be questioning their gender with cancer drugs. And all of a sudden, I find myself at the center of that conversation because I'm the only one that's willing to put it out there, because you get your entire career canceled if you explore these difficult conversations.
Very
And this is when
controversial.
Bill got involved.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Ah,
And this
okay.
is when Bill was like, I don't understand, why is nobody talking about this? And I said, one of the doctors I speak with calls it medical McCarthyism. They're being pressurized from all sides. They don't want the big pharma cartels coming down upon them. They don't want the social justice warriors ruining their careers. And he said, I want to weaponize you. I want to make this an even bigger platform. I want to bring it to video, and I want to make you cancel proof so you can have these fearless, thoughtful explorations into these really difficult topics. And he's like, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, we had a show drop with a world-renowned gastroenterologist. And when I say world-renowned, I mean, this is a woman that has been doing clinical trials for drug companies for 30 years.
Wow.
She invented 57 different protocols for different medications. And she was silenced during COVID. And she was doing research on ivermectin and also the way the vaccine impacts our microbiome. Of course, we dropped the episode. And the next day, Mark Zuckerberg comes out and says, we were forced to silence information on COVID by the White House. And it's like, and I said, I went to Bill before we dropped it, and I said, I don't know what's going to happen, Bill. Like, this could get the channel shut down. They could get pulled. I don't know. It could get demonetized. And he's like, I don't care. It makes a great case for us to go to Substack then. Like, okay. So we put the show out, and literally the next day, Mark Zuckerberg drops that bombshell. And it's everything that happened to this doctor that I'm interviewing on the show. And people just need to know. They need to know so that they can make their own decisions. None of this is partisan. This is not political. This is health information. You need to know. You take it to your doctor, and then you make the decisions that are right for you and your family without being influenced by a narrative that's coming from big food, big pharma, big farming, and so on.
It's important that we need to be having these conversations, especially like you said, in the health space, that we need to be giving this science communication. And I just interviewed the former director of the NIH, Dr. Francis Collins, who he was, so he was the director, obviously, at the time that COVID was hitting.
Yep.
And just talking about what they did well in terms of that communication, what they wish they had done a little differently. So we're always learning, right? And I think we need to be having these, controversial conversations, because we need to get that information out there and get rid of the misinformation and really be transparent in that way. And I think one way that I've seen you be such a good communicator is embracing new media. I mean, you've gone from fitness DVDs, streaming platforms, radio 15 years ago, you said, being more in the podcasting space now, video podcasts. I mean, you're consistently embracing this new media. You said a lot of things have happened organically for you, of like, oh, this is just the natural next step. Are there other factors or like influence you have from your team members of giving you their insight of like, which tech do you embrace? What platforms do you invest in to really grow your brand's growth?
For me, when I invest in other companies, I'm always looking for the better for you option. Like I invested in a supplement company called Alaya Naturals, and it was created by a mommy of two who had an autoimmune condition and nothing was working for her. So she began her journey into organic, whole food-based supplements. I found the company. I love the company. I invested in it because I thought, okay, here's an independent company that doesn't cut corners, that's honest and transparent in their message. I believe in their product. I believe in what they're doing. So I think it's the better for you version of supplementation. So I'll make those investments in places like Thrive Market or spin gyms back in the day, like Flywheel, but it's always a better for you, accessible, affordable life solution for somebody. When it comes to the messaging, it's when I start to see, honestly, where I'm at right now, the lies. That's where I feel the most compelled, and you see people falling for it. And Ozempic is a perfect example. And
Yeah,
they're being
what are
told,
your thoughts on Ozempic? I mean, that has blown up, I would say, in the past 6, 9 months.
oh God, I would say the past since 2021, and it's
Okay.
been, yeah, a meteoric rise because initially, the long and the short of it is initially semaglutide, which is the drug that both Ozempic and Wegovy actually are. They're just different dosages. Initially, it was meant for as a type 2 diabetes medication, even though, ironically, it was not the gold standard for diabetes. I actually interviewed Dr. William Lee about this. Metformin was the gold standard for diabetes, but the side effect was weight loss. So it was like, oh, wow, we're getting weight loss. Okay. Then the FDA approved Wegovy, which is semaglutide, in a higher dose than Ozempic for people that want to lose weight. And the long and the short of it is that the narrative around this drug is obesity is a disease and you need this drug because you're diseased. And that is an absolute lie. So if you go back to 2013, the American Medical Association had this literally on the docket, right? The yearly meeting, and what are we going to do? Are we going to label obesity a disease, yes or no? And they put together a panel of their own experts to determine, is this a disease, is not a disease? And they said, no, it's not a disease. And they listed a ton of reasons that it's an adaptation, that our bodies have naturally evolved to do this when we take in excess calories.
And it's like, can be
that
like
you
a
can
side
be,
effect to other
oh, yeah.
conditions. Like, were they thinking
Well,
kind of along those lines?
well, obesity results in disease very often, right? But it isn't unto itself a disease. But if I tell you that it is, well, now you're like, well, I can't fix this. I'm diseased. Well, tell me something. Where was this disease 50 years ago? Didn't exist. Prior to 1970, right, with the rise of ultra-processed foods being omnipresent everywhere, in conjunction with our lives becoming more sedentary due to advancements in tech, childhood obesity did not exist. It was not a thing. And the obesity rate and overweight population for adults in America was sub 10%. Now it's 74% of American adults are classified as obese or overweight. So what, they're all diseased suddenly? I mean, that's a quantum leap in genetics. But they actually did end up labeling obesity a disease because you can charge for it. So for example, if a patient goes to a Medicare visit and you bring up obesity with them, that's another thing that you can charge for. And I'm all for, by the way, people getting as much coverage as they can, but it doesn't, of course, cover things like therapy, counseling, healthy food, fitness, just drugs and protocols like CPAP machines. But again, I'm for people getting as much coverage as they can. This narrative, however, is not true, and it's extremely dangerous. If you can empower somebody and say, listen, I get that it's hard for all these reasons. You know, we're psychologically hungry, we're stressed, we're spread thin, we're anxious. We're holding, as Dr. Casey Means calls it, little terrorism devices in our hands that we're staring at every single day.
Oh, yeah.
And then we are exploited by big food being highly addictive, extremely palatable, providing those dopamine hits. It's engineered to do that. This is why so many of us are falling victim to this and why you've got that obesity rate of 74%. But if you can explain to people, listen, you're being exploited and your biology is being hijacked, right? If you can unplug from this matrix and detox from these foods and eat more whole foods, eat a little bit less, move a little bit more, even simple things like 10,000 steps a day on a walking pad while you're working instead of sitting, which sounds like a lot, but it isn't. If you use a walking pad and you shuffle along at, let's say, 1.3 miles an hour while you're answering emails, you'll hit that step goal. And let's say you remove all sugary beverages or all beverages with calories. So no juice, no soda, no 300 calorie frappuccino. You will gradually, over the course of a year, take off that 30, 40, 50 pounds with none of these drugs. And the side effects of these drugs are significant and serious, on top of the fact that you eventually plateau on them, that you have to be on them forever. They're legacy medications. You can never come off of them.
Yeah,
And
it's
you
not a
need to
quick
look at the
fix.
cost benefit. No. And that's why you need to have all the information so you can look at the cost benefit analysis of these drugs with your doctor. it's just crazy, the lies. And you got to
It
figure,
is crazy.
where are the lies coming from? I mean, Big Pharma is buying off that narrative. That drug is the most profitable drug of all time.
And that's
It's
really saying
crazy.
something because the pharmaceutical industry, there's a lot of money flying around. So that is a very impressive stat and scary at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. And I mean, you're someone
Yep.
that is just so obviously passionate. That's what I'm getting out of this, right? That you're so passionate about what you're knowledgeable about to pass that along to your fans. And you've built up a massive following. I mean, we're talking about 100 million people. What is your secret, or what is the method that you feel like you've used to build such a loyal and engaged community and keep them invested in you as a person and a thought leader and the brand, your personal branding that is around Jillian Michaels?
Well, if you deliver a promise, right? You make a promise to your audience, you have to keep it. So promises are really sexy, and a lot of people make them, and that'll get you in the door. But if you want the longevity for your brand and your message, you got to deliver on that promise. And you have to be consistent with your messaging. It doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean you don't change your mind. I've changed my mind throughout the years on different things. But if you're authentic and you're honest and you're transparent, even whether people hate you or they love you, even with some of the shows I've been putting out, people were like, I never thought I would have a Jillian Michaels podcast on my quote bingo card.
Right.
And they obviously didn't like me, right? It was like they obviously weren't fans, but they were like, I really appreciate that she's bringing these conversations and these experts to the forefront.
And you
So
have
you can
respect,
hate
even if
me.
people, are
Right.
not a big fan of you. You're
Exactly.
like, well, Jillian Michaels is giving real opinions and well researched. And sometimes it's good. Like, I like listening to things where I disagree with the person because you get this whole
Oh, yeah.
different viewpoint. Like, there's a lot to be gained there. But going back to that transparency, authenticity, I think that's why you are a household name. And that seems to be how people become really beloved figures among most people when they express that, and people feel like they can trust you. So much is based on trust, and you need to have all of these attributes to be able to be trusted.
I mean, I certainly hope so. That's really what I endeavor for. Obviously, we all want financial security, but how much money do you need?
Yeah, it gets to a point, right?
I want, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. How much money does somebody like Oprah need? She made $250 million off of Weight Watchers. And Weight Watchers bought the online telehealth company that sells semaglutide. And then she did a whole commercial paid for by Novo Nordisk. And it's like, oh, I'm going to divest. Oh, you're going to divest now? After you bought the company, after you made the stock announcement, or the announcement, you owned all this stock you made. It's all out there. It's all public. You made $250 million. How much money do you need? Really? And if you're doing a thoughtful exploration into that drug, you would have people who were presenting the opposite side of the argument, that didn't say it was a panacea, that didn't say it was God's gift, that was explaining some of the dangerous side effects and what you need to be concerned about and what you need to be talking to your doctor about. Like, to me, it's just like, oh my God, how much money do you need? And the reality is, I could sell this drug on JillianMichaels.com. Telehealth is really easy. You get a doctor to do telehealth medicine and prescribe these drugs in conjunction with the compounding pharmacy. Anybody can do it. You're seeing everybody do it because there's so much money in it. So why would I not be like, oh my God, guys, you need this. You got to come get this from me. Then I'm going to put you on a diet that's gonna transition you just for this drug. Oh, and then I got a special workout program just for this drug. Like, come on. So for me, I'm comfortable. I'm good. I got a roof over my head. I got a car to drive. I can feed my kids. I'm very comfortable. I live a good life. I don't need more money to sell my soul. I don't. And that's really the question, I think, is when you are seeking information from people, what is their agenda?
Right. Why are they doing this? Like, you're so as we've been saying, passionate about this, and that's where it's coming from. Yes, this is your career, but you hit that point and you're like, great, I'm financially stable. I'm just working
Right.
towards
What are you
these
selling?
goals and
Right.
yeah, your mission. Yeah. Benny, did you have other
Exactly.
questions
Yeah, I
too?
have one question. First of all, you're a powerhouse, Miss Michaels. I appreciate everything
Oh,
you've
thank
done,
you.
and the achievement of #1 app on Google App Store and the iOS App Store is unbelievable. Like that's unbelievable what kind of empire you've built. But my question is, how do you combat all these individuals who potentially like Big Pharma and this Ozempic? How do we change the narrative of what they're, like to educate the communities to
You
know
gotta
better?
expose it. You have to expose it. And what that means is, we just had a whistleblower on who was a former lobbyist for Big Food and Big Pharma. I can't recall if I've mentioned him on this interview, Callie Means, because I've mentioned him so many times in so many
No,
interviews
this is the
lately.
first we're hearing about it. So thank
Yeah,
you.
Okay,
yeah, awesome.
okay. Callie, whether you hate RFK or you love him, or whether you hate Trump or you love him, Callie was advising both campaigns on health policy that needs to change. So his sister was top of her class, Stanford doc, head and neck surgeon, and he was a lobbyist for Big Food and Big Pharma. Came out of Harvard Business School, and they both lost their mom, their brother sister, to pancreatic cancer within 2 weeks. They didn't catch it. She was diagnosed, died 2 weeks later, and they both kind of walked away from everything they knew and made it their mission to get money from food, pharma, and farming out of politics and start changing policy. So
Wow.
they were both instrumental in that relationship with RFK and Donald Trump, so that RFK, should Donald Trump be elected, be put in a position to start changing things with the FDA, the USDA, and not a good day to be a person working at one of those government agencies right now. So the long and the short of it is, guys like Callie Means, who are nonpartisan, take politics out of it. I get it if you hate Trump, I understand. I get it if you hate RFK, I understand. But you should hope that we are getting these big corporations out of politics, because they're buying off our politicians on both sides. And the politicians are the ones that make the food pyramid and allow Cheerios to put healthy on their box. That provide soda on food stamps, and it's madness. So listening to people like that explain to you that why the American Medical Association voted that obesity should be a disease, even when their experts said not to. Exposing that registered dietitians are being paid off by Big Food to put out a, quote, anti-diet narrative that you can be healthy at any size. And anybody who says otherwise is a fat shamer. And there's actually don't take my word for it, there's a great article in the Washington Post. They did a whole expose on it. Google it, anti-diet, Washington Post, registered dietitian. It'll come up for you. Or the fact that, when you watch 60 Minutes, the day after New Year's, and Leslie Stahl is talking to a doctor named Fatima Cody Stanford, who's paid by Novo Nordisk, who creates, Ozempic, parroting research paid for by Novo Nordisk. It's all paid for. So what you're watching is a commercial paid for by the drug company. The more you expose this stuff, the more people are able to say, okay, now I know there's pros and cons to all of this. Is this risk reward good or bad for me? Where do I fall? And you can take that information and go to your doctor, who, by the way, isn't always fully up to speed on some of this stuff. Doctors they're not nutritionists. They're not registered dietitians. They're not. That's not what they do. They treat diseases. So maybe you need to see somebody with a PhD in nutrition science. Maybe they need to refer you out. But by educating yourself, you can be effectively proactive in your own health and make the decisions that are right for you. But it's diversifying your news feed, digesting media from different places that are talking about the things we're talking about. And then you're also listening to that Leslie Stahl thing on Ozempic. And then do your own homework and then talk to your doctor. That's really what you need to do, is take it all in, disseminate it, talk to a professional you trust, and then make the choices that are right for you and your family.
One more question. Is there any alternatives in like cereals that actually help kids be better and healthier? Is anyone putting that out there? Would you know that? Or
oh gosh, there are some brands that are better for you, but the better for you, I've got a PhD that I talk to a lot on my podcast, named Lane Norton, and his PhD is in nutrition science, and he's awesome. He's way more forgiving than me though, because he wants to get people on the path, right? So he'll say like, okay, fine, if you want to have a diet soda, it's better than a sugar soda, and I'm like, no diet soda, it's all shit, just have water. So I would tell you that, there's something called, I think, like Magic Spoon, but it's still ultra processed. It's just probably less sugar, maybe organic sugar, so you're not getting glyphosate or red 40, but it's still crap. I mean, I let my kids eat crap. They eat crap, but they will have the organic version of the crap, and they'll have it 20% of the time. You know what I mean? Like, my son wanted to use organic cinnamon bun things he saw. So I was like, all right, we went for a hike. He had a cinnamon bun thing, and then we didn't have any other treats. We ate really well the rest of the day. So it's like, you want to make the majority of your choices better for your choices. If you're doing the right thing 80% of the time, and, the less healthy thing 20% of the time, you'll come out on top.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I mean, Jillian Michaels, what a name, so inspirational. We really appreciate you taking the time to just share about your journey of building your empire in such an authentic, amazing way. So thank you so much. I know you got to move on to go record your own show, Keeping It Real with Jillian Michaels, that everybody can check out in their favorite podcast app. So Jillian, thank you again so much. This was amazing.
Oh, thank you guys. I really appreciate your time. Keep doing what you're doing, and I hope to see